Alright, let's talk about the biggest change coming to what is, in my opinion, the most interesting real-time strategy game out there right now, Nebulous Fleet Command. Carriers have been one of the most anticipated features, and they're finally arriving this January, bringing new tactical possibilities to space combat. I've been lucky enough to get exclusive early access to both the trailer and some extra B-roll footage, and there's a lot packed in here that might be easy to miss. So let's break down exactly what we're looking at, and what it means for how battles are going to play out. With the change that these new craft are going to be bringing to the game, this might be the best time to get into Nebulous if you were on the fence before. The trailer opens with a stunning shot of an absolutely wrecked Solomon battleship, the previous king of the battle space. It's taken a huge amount of direct impact fire here, and then a wing of PF-386 Barracuda strike fighters, the new strike craft for the OSP faction, blast over the top of it. We can see that the one in the middle of this group is carrying a mix of weapons and what appear to be targeting pods, highlighting one of the biggest features that this update brings. Not only are both factions getting access to carriers and spacecraft, but you can customize the weapon profiles for these craft and reassign them on the fly when they're docked in your carriers. In this shot here, you can see the PF-440 Tanto, the Alliance fighter variant, and the opposite number to the Barracuda we had to look at a second ago. This sleek craft gives up some of its counterparts' flexibility by using internal missile bays, but gains a reduced radar cross-section in return. Alliance crews can also swap out loadouts faster than their less well-trained OSP counterparts, making up for some of that lost flexibility. Now this is a really interesting shot because this looks like the RS-35 Halberd, the skiff-class vessel that both factions have access to, opening up with what appears to be dual gun pods. I'm really curious to see if this suggests some kind of unexpected dogfighting capability from what I'd assume would be more of a utility craft. And here's a blink and you'll miss it shot of something absolutely terrifying for capital ship users: cluster bombs. These are going to be especially devastating against lightly armored ships like light cruisers and container liners. These unguided weapons are going to rain down multiple submunitions on their targets, and I'm really curious how point defense weapons will interact with them. Are they even large enough for a decent radar lock for last resort weapons like the Bastion? And even if some miss, just a few hits on these lighter ships could be devastating. I expect these will be really strong against softened targets too, like battleships that have had their armor weakened by plasma fire. And this is just a really awesome shot of the Alliance Levy class support carrier launching under fire. Now this is something very special. If you go back to the previous devlog, only the Alliance had a dedicated carrier. The OSP were just using a conversion kit to add launch pads to their larger ships. But looking at what's on screen right now, the OSP have been given a gorgeous dedicated carrier of their own. I've got a press release from Hooded Horse about this trailer, and it mentions 2 new hulls. So it's official, we're getting dedicated carriers for both factions. The question now remains, do the OSP still have the ability to fit launcher modules on their other ships, or is it now a role relegated specifically to carriers for both sides? What you can see here is a halberd skiff mounted on what appears to be an Axford heavy cruiser. But this doesn't totally answer our previous question. The halberd's role is similar to that of a ship-based helicopter in a modern navy, and I believe it can be fitted anywhere that there's a big enough slot. Most warships won't have the internal systems required for something like a bomber or a fighter though. I'm expecting that they will need specialized facilities for those craft that you would find only in a carrier. And this is an awesome shot of probably one of the scariest new craft in this update, the OSP B-45 Sturgeon Bomber. If nothing has changed from the last devlog, this craft can mount 8 size 2 missiles or 4 size 3 torpedoes. And if the idea of a wing of these coming at your battleship from behind a rock, all armed to the teeth with barely any time to react, doesn't fill you with fear, I don't know what to say. And here's what makes them even deadlier. Unlike capital ships, these bombers and their ANS counterparts can launch multiple command-guided missiles or torpedoes in a single salvo, making them incredibly difficult to soft kill with electronic warfare. Now we have some great shots of dogfighting and missile runs, giving us an idea of the sort of things Craft will be getting up to in this update. But then we're shown this, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it. At first glance, I assumed it was some kind of buoy, with those rotating thrusters designed to keep it in place. But if you look closely, it has mounting rails at the top of the picture, and what looks like a sensor or even possibly a contact trigger at the bottom. I'm wondering if this could be some kind of massive guided bomb. The scale is hard to tell, but it looks pretty big to me. I have to say that I'm really excited for this update. Personally, I've been avoiding playing Nebulous recently in anticipation of this update so that I could come into it fresh. There's a whole lot of really interesting new ways to play and new roles for existing ships, and I think it's really important to acknowledge that these new craft aren't entering the game in a vacuum. Their inclusion is going to have knock-on effects to a lot of other systems. And I wonder if hulls like corvettes and shuttles might get a new lease on life as anti-craft platforms, and how weapons like the Sarissa and the Aurora Laser PD might perform in a craft-heavy environment. And on that topic, how is point defense going to cope when the ship reads incoming missiles and bombers inbound? What does it prioritize? What should it prioritize? Is there a role for dedicated anti-craft ships, or do you rely on strike fighters and interceptors built out for these specific roles? The whole meta could shift when you factor in craft like the RF-286 Pike, an OSP exclusive scout craft that can equip things like electrical optical pods, providing team-wide vision on specific distant targets, accurate enough for ships that can't conventionally see them to actually fire upon. And then there's the Alliance's E-44 Sundial, their dedicated CWAC, that space-borne early warning and control craft. It's going to revolutionize battlefield awareness in its own way. And then the carriers themselves show such different design philosophies between the factions. The Alliance's Levy class is all about rapid turnaround times, getting craft back into the fight quickly, while the OSP's new dedicated carrier and philosophy seems to be built around flexibility and volume of craft. It's fascinating how these differences extend all the way down to their smallest craft. How will traditional point defense networks and electronic warfare hold up in this new environment? Between the accurate target sharing, the customizable loadouts you can switch mid-battle, and all these new unguided weapons, January 10th cannot come soon enough.